Welcome to Coffee with Kay, where we're going to make sure the coffee is always served strong, but it's also going to come with a side of truth, and that's truth with a capital T. The truth of God, that is. I'm here to equip and encourage you, Saint. Yep, that's right, you. And if you're not familiar with the sainthood, I want to teach you what it is, and I want to invite you to the family. So, let's get right into it.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race for you. Monday, happy, happy days. Tuesday, happy, happy days. Monday, happy, happy days. Tuesday, happy, happy days.
Welcome back to episode 2, Coffee with Kay, season 4, an ode to my 20s. I'm so glad to be back on a pretty regular podcasting schedule. Last week I said I was not going to try and get my hopes up, but I'm honestly going to try and get my hopes up, you guys. I really enjoy podcasting. It gives me life, and it's also the one time a week where I get complete silence to myself, which is I'm not complaining. I love my kids. I have 3 kids, 7 and under. We live in a 900 square foot house. Okay, it just is really loud in here. And I am an introvert to the max. I get rejuvenated, reboosted with complete silence and time to myself. And so I honestly do cherish these times that I get to just have quiet and silence and solitude. It restores my soul. It is so awesome. But also, it's been really fun the past 4 years getting to run this podcast, host this podcast, and share it with the world or whoever is listening. And I have big dreams and hopes and goals for it. So, it's one episode at a time. I'm not pushing or rushing for anything, but I'm hopeful to see where this podcast goes. And as always, I just hope that is an encouragement or an inspiration to anybody out there listening. So this season is called An Ode to My 20s. So I'm dedicating this whole season to reminiscing on my past decade of life. Next week, I turn 30, which is good. It's good. I know Proverbs says that age is a blessing, and I agree with that. I'm thankful for every day God gives me, even when they're hard, even when they're challenging, even when I'm questioning my life all the time. I should stress that there is a reason He puts me here, and I'm just going to try and make the most of every day and not grumble and not complain and enjoy my life. So yeah, I turn 30 next week. I have literally been in denial for the past 10 months. And for the past 2 months, I've been slowly accepting that this is happening. I don't know why I'm so bothered by being 30. Maybe I really don't know. I've really enjoyed being young. I am always the youngest in my friend group. Usually I have a couple friends that are younger than me, but not many. Usually I'm the youngest, and I forget how young I am usually. So it just feels weird to be oh, I'm 30. I can't raise my hand and say, oh yeah, I'm under 30. I'm in my 20s. And I'm going to miss that. But I'm going to get over it. So I have to get over it. It's happening, whether I want it to or not. So yeah, I am dedicating this season to just looking back on the past 10 years of my life and just sharing about what I've learned and comparing and contrasting them. So last episode, I talked about my first couple weeks of being 20. So make sure you listen to that episode first, because I tried to lay a pretty good foundation for where this season is going to take us. And I really tried to walk y'all through where I was when I turned 20, what I was doing, what my life looked like, and my big transition. My big transition was that right before I turned 20, I became a Christian. A month after I turned 20, I got baptized, and I really started living out my faith, sobering up, and pursuing a walk with the Lord. And so that was quite the grand slam introduction into a new decade of life, and it was a lot. And I feel like I've been unraveling the past 10 years of life for the past year, because there's a lot happen at once. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about today. Today, I thought it would be really great to talk about, this episode is titled What Plans? And that's kind of what I felt like my 20s have been. What plans? What even is a plan? Because I entered my 20s with a lot of hopes and dreams and goals, and I'm kind of like I'm kind of a person where once I make a decision or once I say like, okay, I really want to do this, I really am the type of person, even more so when I was younger. Now it's not as easy because of the life stage that I'm in and the season of life that I'm in. But when I was younger, if there was something I wanted, if there was something I wanted to do, something I wanted to be, I put my, like, I can't think of the phrase. By the way, I'm so bad at phrases. I always mess them up, so don't make fun of me. But, like, I want to say put my head to the grinder, but I know that's not what you say. Basically, like, I put my head down and did what I needed to do to get where I wanted to be. And I think that's kind of been the most challenging part of my 20s. Like, what is the plan? Because I think God has really showed me his sovereignty. And I've always been pretty obsessed with, like, God's sovereignty versus our free will and where those two things collide. For whatever reason, that is like one of the biggest mysteries of faith that I have the hardest time wrapping my head around. So I'm kind of like a psycho when I analyze it to the umpteenth degree because I just want to understand what he's doing. And I'm never going to understand that. So I'm just probably going to be driving myself insane until I go to heaven, which is fine. We all have our little ADHD quirks, right? So yes, I feel like that was my 20s. As a teenager, as like a middle schooler, high schooler, every season, winter, spring, summer, fall, I would make a bucket list and I would put it in a little like laminating slip and I would tape it on my wall. And I would try to mark off as much as I could on that bucket list every season. And it would be like making the honor roll, breaking a certain personal record on the swim team, getting so many first place, second place ribbons, going on, like asking so-and-so to dance at the next dance, or getting a certain, position in a club that I was in, or like having a fitness goal, having a weight goal, baking, learning how to bake this dessert. I probably have them saved somewhere in a memory box. But I mean, that is what kept me going. I always was dreaming. I was always thinking about the next thing. I was always thinking about the next step. And like my ultimate goal when I was younger was I want to get out of here as fast as I can and get out of my parents' houses and be on my own. What do I need to do to get there? And I mean that, excuse my language, but I had to kick ass and take names because if I wanted to go to college, nobody was paying for it. I was paying for it. And so when I was 15, every season, I was like, I need to fill out so many scholarships every season. At 15, sophomore in high school, I was applying for scholarships, researching colleges, meeting with my guidance counselor. Like, I was doing everything I could to set myself up to get out of the house as soon as I graduated. And I could have graduated early. I already had a late birthday. I'm from Connecticut. They don't have the same laws as in the South, so I was able to start, I think, kindergarten when I was 4, not 5. And so when I graduated high school, I was 17. I wasn't 18. I wasn't 17 for like almost 6 months. I think it was 3 months. Anyway, so when I started college, I was 17. And I could have graduated high school early. I wanted to. My mom didn't want me to. She wanted me to be able to like go to prom and go to senior homecoming and experience all the senior activities at our high school, especially because I was moved to Texas. Like the South and high school and senior year is completely different from the East Coast experience. I personally did not care. All I ever wanted to be since I was little was a grown-up. I just wanted to be a grown-up and be on my own and make my own money and travel the world. So that was kind of my rough plan growing up. I always wanted to be a baby nurse. You could have asked 3-year-old Kiri what she wanted to be when she grew up, and it was always a baby nurse. I was obsessed with labor and delivery, literally from a toddler. Obsessed. I would steal my mom's, like, she had like a red health encyclopedia because, we didn't have computers back then. My mom had this thick red encyclopedia about all these different types of ailments and illnesses, and like if you got sick or there was an emergency, like you would consult the encyclopedia. We didn't have Google, which is kind of great. So she kept it in the kitchen, and I would love to go look through it and like skim through it and look at the little drawings and eventually read it. And then she got pregnant with my brother when I was 5, and she would keep her baby books under her bed, and I would go to her room and take them from under the bed. And they were graphic, and because it's like birthing books and stuff, and I was enamored by it. And so she finally caught on to what I was doing, and like she would let me watch that old TLC show, A Baby Story, and they would blur it out and stuff, but it would show you the video, the couple finds out they're pregnant, and this is like early 2000s, late 90s television. I'm sure you could YouTube it, but she would let me watch that. She would supervise me and let me watch it after school sometimes because I was just so fascinated. I loved birth. I loved babies. I thought pregnancy was so cool. I loved going to her obstetrician appointments with her and like getting to use the Doppler and seeing the ultrasound. And if I could have been, in the surgical room when she had her C-section, like I probably would have been there. Now, no, I realize I don't do blood. Like, I'm going to get to that part of the plan. But if you haven't guessed, I did not become a baby nurse. And I think I talked about that in the last episode, that right before my junior year, when I would have started nursing school, that I was automatically accepted into one of like the best nursing schools in Texas. And I turned it down. And I really don't regret it because for a while, I felt like maybe I was telling myself this just to kind of like cope with not ending up going to nursing school and fulfilling this literal lifelong dream that I'd always had. But then every so often, I have a medical emergency with myself or my kids where I like nearly pass out. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no. Because I realized in college, I struggled through science. I mean, to the umpteenth degree. And I knew I'd had to take a microbiology class before I started nursing school. And I literally couldn't get through anatomy and physiology. And I was like, if I can't figure out a liver from a spleen, which I can, it wasn't that bad, but I really struggled in those classes. I had to retake A&P1 and A&P2 three times just to get a B. And I ended up having to go to a different school and take a summer class to pass A&P2 so I could get through my kinesiology degree and graduate. Literally, anatomy and physiology put me almost a whole year behind in my college degree, just trying to pass those classes. So I thought I would be doing the world a favor to not become a nurse because I'm not trying to be responsible for accidentally killing somebody. Like, I don't want that. I do not want that pressure. I do not want that label. And I kind of realized, this isn't my strong suit. Being caring, bedside manner, taking care of people, like taking care of babies, taking care of kids, like that's what I really like to do. But like being responsible for medicines and being on my feet for 12 hours, I am not a high energy person. I also learned that in college. Like I was literally crying thinking about how I could make it through a 12-hour shift in 2 years after after my junior year. I was like, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to go to be a nurse and I have to be on my feet for 12 hours. I can't do that. Like, I don't think I can do that. And I would try. I would take long shifts at my little campus jobs when I could, or like put my schedule back to back so I would be on my feet or be in a class and then at a club and et cetera, for 12 hours or 10 hours. So I could kind of like get adjusted to that. And I would just be dying. I would be dying. And I was like, I don't see how I could possibly be a nurse. And I get it that like it's challenging for all nurses. But yeah, I just kind of had this moment where I was like, I don't think that as much as I want this, and I've wanted this my entire life, there was a brief moment where I did not want to be a nurse. When I was 10, I wanted to be in the Olympics, and because I was a swimmer, was like, I want to be in the Olympics. I want to be an amazing swimmer. Like, I want to compete with Michael Phelps someday. And yeah, people who are in the Olympics have been training their entire life for that. And you have to kind of have some money to do that. I couldn't swim on club teams every summer, every spring, every fall. And that's kind of what it takes to be able to build up that endurance and become a super strong swimmer. You have to have all those practices put in from the time you are like 10 up through college. And we did not have the money for that. I didn't have the time and the money to be able to go do those extra practices and like strength train and endurance train and have like private lessons. Like, we did not have that. So I pretty much had to like kick it at club team. I swam on a club team from the time I was 8 until I went to high school at 14. And then I didn't swim my freshman year because I didn't know if I wanted to join the swim team. I really don't understand why, because I like loved to swim. Oh, I was the new girl. I moved to a new high school, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. But then the coach like really like recruited me and was like, you have to swim for me. What are you doing? And so I joined, and it was amazing. I loved my swim team. I made varsity my sophomore year. I swam through my senior year. So yeah, I wanted to be in the Olympics, but then by the end of middle school, I was like, that's not gonna happen. Okay, sorry. 3, 2, 1. That's probably not gonna happen. So, and then I loved to write. I started writing poetry when I was 12, but I never really considered that as a career. And my parents knew I wanted to be a nurse, so they were very, very very supportive of that dream. Because too, it's like, there's always going to be nursing jobs. It's a very like sustainable career. You know, a writer, that's not really sustainable. So yeah, that was always my plan. And then that plan changed when I got to college. And I also realized I'm super squeamish. I do not do blood. Like 2 days ago, I was out feeding my cats, and we have like a gravelly, quickcrete driveway. So in some places it's kind of firm, and in some places it's really loose. And you kind of don't really know what you're going to get till you step on it. Well, I stepped on it and I ate it. Oh my goodness. I ate it. And I came down on my left knee so hard. There was gravel like in my knee, and it took a huge chunk. I mean, a literal chunk out of my knee. It's so gross. And I'm like, I kept my leggings on for an extra hour and a half because I did not want to take them off and see what was underneath. And I'm like bleeding through my leggings, and I'm just like, I finally took them off, and I'm just gagging. And I've been like taking care of this wound the past couple days, and it just is so gross. It's so gross. And my allergies are really bothering me in this time of year. I get bloody noses really bad. And so like this morning I went to blow my nose, and like I just kind of itched, like I rubbed my nose because it's itchy. And then I like looked down and I just felt a gush, and I was like, oh no. And luckily I had the light off, so I could just like, I put tissue under my nose and the tissue came back and it was dark. But like luckily the light was off, so I couldn't see the blood, because it just like, it makes my stomach turn, guys. I cannot do with blood, which is crazy because I wanted to be a labor and delivery and a NICU nurse. I don't know when you're going to see more blood and excrement than in those. Anyway, so when I turned 20, right before I turned 20, yeah, I knew I wasn't going to be a nurse. And so now I'm on this different trajectory for the first time in my life that I'm like, I got to put a life plan together. I've had this life plan since I was 3. And now it's gone. What am I going to do? So like I said, I changed my major to kinesiology, study of the movement of the body. And my hope was to run a gym. I'd gotten really into working out. Like I said, I've always been active. I've always been athletic. And I started working at the gym at my college, and I really liked it. I got a group exercise certification. I was teaching group exercise classes, and I was like, I could do this. Maybe I'll open a gym. And my parents were like, that's a horrible idea. You will never make any money. Like, that's not a good idea. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And then by the end of college, I was like, I don't want to do that. I had an internship. I worked for Verizon in Dallas. So my husband and I moved to Dallas so I could be closer to my internship. And he at the time was in occupational therapy school. And so we moved from North Texas and Denton, where we went to college and where we had been living, where we met after we graduated. I graduated, we went to, we moved to Dallas and worked out there and went to school out there. So I had this internship with Verizon, and it was like a really great internship. Guys, I'm so sorry. I highly doubt my internship coordinate supervisor will ever hear this, but like it was the worst experience ever. And by the end of it, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. And I opened up to her about that because they offered me a job, and I was like, I started crying. I started tearing up. I was like, I don't think this is what I want to do. Like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And she gave me a B because of that, you guys. I worked so hard for this internship. And like, because I opened up and said like I didn't want to work for them. And she tried to like make my internship go beyond my semester, which she was not supposed to do. And I never agreed to that. And I said, no, like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna, like, I did my part. I satisfied my agreement. And I don't want to do this. Like, I want to go find a different job and like start my life. And I need to like feed my family because I don't get paid enough to do this. I need to make more money. And so she gave me a B because of that. And it was so frustrating. But I was just like, yeah, this sucks. Because now I've worked for the past 2.5 years to get to this point where my hope was like I was getting my personal trainer certification. I got this awesome internship, so that would hopefully roll me into a corporate fitness opportunity because that's what I wanted to do. So my hope was to work with like big corporations and run their gyms and work with like employee healthcare. And usually you do like incentives to get employees to come to the gym and like take little nutrition classes or like take little nutrition webinars or like different health and wellness webinars for those people working in the corporations so that essentially they'll be better employees, have longer life expectancies, have longer retention rates because they're healthy, which is going to cost the employees less money or the employers less money because their employees are healthy and mentally balanced, have like a balanced lifestyle so they can work harder, work better, right? That's what corporate wellness is. That's what I wanted to do. And then I finished that internship and I was like, I'm not doing that. It was so depressing. And granted, my internship experience was a little biased because I ended up coming into this internship and then the week before I started, maybe a week or two before I started, the Verizon employees went on strike. And so the people who were in the call centers for Verizon all went on strike, like nationwide. And so these big corporate centers, the corporate workers who are like in charge of these accounts and in charge of these customers and like making the big money, they become the call center. And they are shipping people all over the nation to fill in roles and to fill in spots. And these are people who like have college degrees or driving Audis, and now they're working a call center at their desk. And so everybody is stressed, everybody is crying, everybody's gaining weight. Half the people weren't even from Texas. They were shipped in from somewhere else, living in a hotel, eating hotel food. So like they would have stretch breaks and we'd go around the building and like lead everybody through like some deep breathing and stretch breaks, and people are having mental breakdowns and crying. It was insane. It was horrible. And the strike lasted almost I think it was my whole internship, actually. I really can't remember if it stopped before that. And then I find out once I started, I think maybe she told me, I really can't remember if she told me at the beginning of the internship or like once I started that, oh yeah, this center is closing down. So we have no budget. There's nothing for you. Like we're not growing the space. We're not hosting it like any big webinars or any big programs because they cut our budget. So whatever you can find in the craft cabinet is what you can use to do your projects. And I was like, are you kidding me? So you're giving me this impossible task that has like no fruit to it. So again, it was a biased experience, but I was just like, I don't think this is what I want to do. And then trying to find a job was impossible because like that type of job doesn't have high turnover. Usually people work in corporate wellness for decades and decades and decades. And it just was not, it wasn't like a super well-known thing 10 years ago. I think it's more well-known now, but 10, 20 years ago, not really. I think it was starting to get more popular back then. So I'm trying to look for jobs. I'm applying to the YMCA. I'm applying to being like a pool manager, a pool supervisor, anything in the fitness realm. And I got no bites. And it was so frustrating because I was an honors student in college with an exquisite resume, exquisite internship, and I could not find a job. And so I ended up taking a job it's called an Aqua Tots. And so it's like a kid's swim lesson, like little gym. It's a franchise. And so I started working there because I applied to a supervisor position. I had run pools before. I had run the natatorium at my college. Like I knew everything there was to know about pools and swimming. And so I was super excited for that job. I was supposed to be like a manager there, and this boss just kept stringing me along and never sending me to training and never like giving me hours. And then he ended up shutting that one down, and because he like went bankrupt or something. So, I mean, he was just a horrible boss. And I quit that experience because after so many weeks, I was like, I need a job. I just graduated college. I can't just teach swim lessons. Like I need a big girl job. That's why I applied, and that's the job you gave me, and you're not giving it to me. So I'm going to move on. And so I worked for that job maybe 2 months, and then I moved on. And so I really don't remember what I did after that. I had just kind of a hodgepodge of jobs, like bouncing around looking for work. But that's when I got into, I worked for a wedding planner. So all this to say, my plans rapidly changed after I turned 20. So at this point, I'm 21. Sorry. I, graduated college. I ended up getting married. I'll back it up a little bit. So I missed a lot of the story, you guys. I'm going to stop there at 21, wedding planning, right? So now I'm going to back it up. After I turned 20, I had been a lesbian. If you don't know that about me by now, you've got to listen to my earlier episodes. I talk about it extensively. And I had written off dating. I had written off boys. I was never going to get married pretty much. I wanted to be like celibate and single. I had dated maybe like 2 other guys barely after I became a Christian. And it just didn't go well. And I was just kind of like, this is stupid. People ghost you and like lead you on. And I just was like, whatever. Like, I just want to focus on school. I had this really big dream, this really big goal. I'm trying to go somewhere and do something big with my life. I don't need any boys to get in the way or girls. And so I actually considered joining the Navy that year. That was my junior year. Came back from school. I'm 20 years old. I considered joining the Navy. I took the ASVAB test and everything. I talked to recruiters. I scored really high on my ASVAB test, so I could have gotten like a really high security clearance job, which would have let me travel the world and make tons of money. Like, it would have been awesome. I ended up not doing that. I had a friend whose husband was in the Navy, and I talked to him extensively about it, and he just was pretty frank about like what goes on behind those closed steel doors for women in the Navy. And it's not what you see online when you talk to the recruiters. And I also had this really strange, it wasn't quite a vision, but I remember I was talking to a friend outside one day and talking about the Navy, and I felt this pressing, and like in my soul, it felt like an audible voice. Like, I didn't hear it in my ears, but I heard it in my heart. And something said, I know you don't want a family now, but one day you're going to want a family. And if you do this, you're going to have to choose. And in the military, they don't care. If they tell you to go, you're going to have to get up and go. You're going to have to leave your kids. You're going to have to leave your husband. You're going to have to go for months at a time. You thought a 12-hour shift was challenging? Imagine a 12-month shift. And so I was just like, that's weird. Because at this point, I had written off dating. I had written off boys. I was like, I'm not getting married. I'm just going to be on my own, right? And then I have this, almost a change of heart. That's like, that's not what's going to happen. And so I did not go to the Navy. I stayed in school. And then that's when I met my now husband. We met in school. We had the same degree. We had like 4 or 5 classes together this one semester when I came back to school. One of the classes we got grouped together in. Another class we started a study group together in. He started a cycling club. I joined his cycling club to support it, and I ended up liking cycling. And so I just went, and we became friends, just genuine friends. I thought he was dating somebody else in our class. He wasn't. And then maybe after like 2 months, I was just like, hey, we also realized we'd gone to the same church for like 2 years and we never knew each other. We saw each other at like a membership class one day and we're like, oh, yeah, I did not know you went here, but okay. And so like he started coming to study group a little earlier and a little earlier, and we would just hang out a little bit more and a little bit more. And eventually he asked me out on a date, and I was really busy. Like I said in that last episode, like I was working like 5 jobs when I went back to school so I could get through school because I lost some of my scholarships because I was dumb. And so I was like, I know it's October. You gonna take me out on a date in November? Because that's when I've got the time. And so he had to wait like a whole month to take me on our first date. And I was not really like, I wasn't expecting anything to come of it. I really was like, I didn't feel like I had a reason to tell him no other than, well, I don't want to. And for me, like, I don't want to is never a reason. I'm never going to not do something because I don't want to. Just a fun fact about me. I have to have a legitimate reason not to do something. And so I gave him a chance, you know? And I think it was interesting because, like, he was not my type. And at that point, I didn't even know what my type was. And I didn't even trust what to know. I didn't even trust myself to figure out what my type was. But, you know, I asked my friends, like, I had him around my friends a lot. What do you think about this guy? Like, spiritual mentors in my life. What do you think about this guy? And they gave him the green flag. And so I was like, okay, yeah, we can go on a date. And, like, we really did hit it off. And, like, that's another story for another time. That'll be in the next episode. But, yeah, so I'm 20 years old. And I just have all these plans, all these dreams rapidly change. Some of them crash and burn in, like, a 6-month tiny period. So now I'm in this serious relationship with this guy. I just became a Christian. I don't know what I'm doing. I just wanted to go off and join the Navy, and now I'm not, and I'm staying in school, and I gotta finish school, and I gotta work, and I end up getting married about a year later. So when I turned 21, we got engaged. I think we had got engaged like 2 months before I turned 21, 3 months before I turned 21, and then that following winter we got pregnant. Not pregnant. We got married. Oh my gosh. We got married. My senior year of college, I'd been 21 for a couple months. We got married. So in the span of a year and a half, I went from being an out lesbian, non-Christian, agnostic, whatever you want to call me, pothead, and now a year and a half later, I'm a Christian wife. Like, and you know, that was never on Kiri's bucket list. Never, ever. By the time I turned 20, I'm like, I'm not getting married. I'm going to be single. I'm going to join the Navy. I'm going to get out. I'll be able to finish my degree, have it paid for. Then I'll be a captain. Then I'll retire from the Navy after I do my 4 or 5 year stint. And then I'll be able to have like any job I want. And I'm going to be a corporate baddie. And maybe when I'm 27, I'll adopt 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and I'll raise them on my own. That was my plan. And I was totally okay with my plan. That was my plan. And none of that happened. And so, like I said, I'm going to stop at 21. I've been married for about 9 months. I was working at an Aqua Tots, and I quit that job, and I started working for a wedding planner, and then trying to reestablish my dreams and my goals and my vision for life and who I am and what I want to do and what brings me joy and what I'm good at. And that's where I'm going to stop. And I'm going to pick up on that in the next episode. So the beginning of my 20s went from 0 to 100 real quick. And I want to say, looking back, going into my 30s, that never stopped. There were still so many plans, so many things I had set in motion that I really wanted to happen that never happened. And some of them won't happen. Some of those things I'm really glad about. Some of those things I really mourn. And that's where I was saying at the beginning of this episode that I'm just kind of obsessed with identifying the intersection of God's sovereignty and his divine plans for his image bearers and our free will. Because if there's anything I learned in my 20s, it's that you can push and shove and put a circle into a square hole, circle peg into a square hole as much as you want, and it won't fit. And that is so hard. You can get all the allocates, you can have the bombest resume, you can get an A+ in your internship, you can do all these things and achieve all these goals, and that does not guarantee you're going to get where you want to go. But that doesn't mean it's about you. And that really puts you in your place. And so if there's anything I've learned in my 20s, it's that. And even going into my 30s now, that is probably my biggest struggle of like, this is not what I had in mind. And sometimes it feels like my clock is ticking and I'm not getting where I want to go. So where do you want me to go? Like, can you just make it a little clearer? And he doesn't always make it clear. And then, yeah, like in your 20s, I'm sure many of you have experienced you having a certain dream, goal, vision, hope, desire, and it doesn't happen for you for whatever reason, but it starts happening to other people you love, other people you care about, your friends or family. And it's so hard to rectify that, right? It's so hard to be like, I'm so happy for you, when deep down inside you're like, that's the one thing I wanted, like, for my whole life is to get XYZ or whatever. And it makes it hard to celebrate or whatever, or feel like you're not doing the right thing, or God doesn't love you, or you're making wrong decisions and you're not. And so I can't even pretend to speak into that. I'm still figuring that out for myself. But what plans? That's with my 20s. What plans? And that's something I really hope to see some fruit and change in my 30s. That when plans change, when desires change, when hopes or dreams don't come to fruition, that it doesn't just like break me down like it did in some instances when I was younger. That instead it just continues to encourage me to pursue the Lord and like what he has for me, what he desires for me, and like dying to myself and trusting his plans and not trusting myself and my plans. And like that comes at like an hour by hour basis, honestly, especially these days, especially with little kids. I just never know what's around the corner. So, yeah, in the Bible where it says like, we don't boast about tomorrow because we don't know what tomorrow brings. That has been my 20s. Okay. And by the end of them, I've been telling friends lately, like, we are functioning at an hour by hour basis. I would love to hang out with you tomorrow or next week, but I'm going to tell you now, I don't know what the future holds. And our life is just like so up in the air that it feels hard for us to be able to make concrete plans. So just don't take it personally. I'm trying not to take it personally, and it's my life, right? And I'm not just this overbusy, overcommitted person. Like, that's just the season. But I'm trying to trust that, like, God has good intentions for it. And truthfully, that has been incredibly challenging for me. It's been incredibly challenging at the end of my 20s to look back and like, not question everything, not question, like, was that a mistake? Was this a mistake? Was I being disobedient? Was I not making a wise choice? Like, because I'm not where I want to be. So maybe that means that I did something to cause that, versus maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. And all those things that led to this point was God's sovereign will and hope and his best for me. And so, yeah, I'm still working that out, but I'm sure as I get through my 30s and like continue processing and learning and growing and like being shaped, that God will make that clear. And that's my biggest hope for my 30s, is that like God can give me a plan and show me his plan for me through his word and also through life experience and like different spiritual gifts or like different spiritual explanations. So we'll see. So anyway, I'm super excited to continue sharing this story with you. Sorry to have left out so much. I just was on a roll there. There's so many layers to these stories. But yeah, I just hope this is encouraging to you and gives you some insight. And if you're in your 20s, maybe you resonate with some of this. Maybe you don't resonate with any of it. If you're in your 30s and older, maybe you resonate with some of this. Maybe you don't resonate with any of it. But, you know, if you have any feedback, definitely send me an email, send me an Instagram DM. Like, I always respond to them, and I want to hear your stories too. It's not just all about what I got to say. So with that said, I am logging off for this week, and I will join you next Friday for episode 3 of An Ode to My 20s, and I'll actually be 30 when that episode drops next week. So this week is just going to be a week of celebration online. If you don't follow me on Instagram yet, you need to follow me. Every year for the past 7 years now, I have done a thrifty birthday giveaway because I love to thrift and I love my birthday next to the 4th of July. It is my favorite holiday. And so I've begun this practice of giving back because as much as I love my birthday, I don't want to idolize my birthday. And I want to be others focused and others minded on what's my favorite day of the year, my birthday. So every year for the past 7 years, I have done a giveaway, and they get better and better every year. So that giveaway is going to launch next Monday. So make sure you follow me on social media so you can join it and participate in all the fun and birthday festivities going on next week. So with that said, I will talk to you next week.
There's nothing can hold me like gray sky, hello blue. There's nothing can hold me when I